The Wednesday, August 24th, 2022 special meeting of the Fairfield Board of Education is called to order. I'm the chair, Christine Vitale, and I'm joined tonight by Ms. Rotelli, Ms. Jacobson, Ms. Guernsey, Mrs. Gerber, Superintendent Tracy, Dr. Tracy, Mr. Asa, Mrs. Maxicanelli, Mr. Peterson, and Ms. Kelly. I ask you all to please rise for the pledge and please remain standing for a moment of silence in memory of Gilberto Rodriguez, who we lost over the summer, and for the war community. Our thoughts and prayers are with their family and our school community. Thank you. And Mrs. Maxicanelli, will you lead us in the pledge? Thank you. I want to thank the board for making time out of the summer for this special meeting. Twofold, we have some business to conduct, and we also, the primary reason for tonight's meeting is discussion and action on the election of superintendent of schools for the Fairfield Public Schools. So I'm going to put that on the table for discussion. This is a personal matter, so we typically don't discuss personnel matters at the table. Just as a little recap for the public, our previous superintendent, Michael Cummings, announced his semi-retirement back in the spring. The board retained CES to engage the community in a superintendent search. Over the spring, there were a number of focus groups conducted by CES to get community feedback. There was a survey that was also put out to the community. Over 700 people responded to that survey. An executive profile was developed. That information was used by the board to inform our decision-making and move our superintendent search forward. The board spent you haven't seen us, but we've been busy at work most of July and the good part of August and worked around vacation plans and school drop-offs. And I'm very happy that we're here today to take action, hopefully, on this item. And with that, what limited discussion we have, Mr. Asa, I see your hand up.
So I'd like to make a motion to elect the superintendent. The Fairfield Board of Education hereby moves, pursuant to Connecticut General Statutes, Section 10-157, and all other applicable authority, to elect Michael Testani as Superintendent of Schools for the term of November 1st, 2022 to October 31st, 2025, with the terms of the employment of the superintendent to be set forth in a written contract to be executed by Mr. Testani and the board. The board further delegates to the chair the authority to execute the final contract document on behalf of the board. Further, this motion and election of the superintendent is contingent upon Mr. Testani executing the contract documents for the said term.
Can I have a second to that motion? Ms. Rotelli? And given the importance of this, I'm going to give a little leeway on discussion, and Mr. Asa, being that you made the motion, give you a moment to say a few words.
Okay, I just prepared a couple comments here. In my sarcastic ways, I must say, despite being smack in the middle of my summer week vacation, I am thrilled to be back here tonight to vote on our new superintendent. When I ran for my second term, I did not think it would involve hiring another one. That being said, I am extremely optimistic and energized at what I truly believe Mr. Testani will bring to Fairfield Public Schools. I believe the students, staff, and FPS families need a strong organizational leader to navigate us into the next 5 years with our newly adopted district improvement plan, and someone who knows how to manage a large district and make the most out of every dollar in our budget. I believe Mr. Testani and the central office team under him will be able to support the staff in a way that delivers the best possible education for every student. Further, I believe he will be able to help guide the district in evaluating existing and future educational initiatives to ensure we are getting the best value for our investments. During the interviewing process, Mr. Testani impressed me with his desire to evaluate programs and to make sure they are working as designed, and if not, make decisions that involve change for the best interest of kids. He believes in meeting the needs of every student and working within a responsible budget. He is already a resident of Fairfield and invested in our community and the success of Fairfield Public Schools. I wish Mr. Testani the best and look forward to working with him in the coming years. And just want to make one note, which is kind of a housekeeping note, that this motion that I've made states November 1st start date. But we understand that any new superintendent coming in may have to give 90 days notice. So there is a possibility in a future meeting if we may need to vote on an updated contract, which would simply be updating the terms potentially a couple weeks later than November 1st, but just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Asa. Ms. Rotelli, you were the second, so I will, if you would choose to give some.
Sure,
comments
thank
as
you.
well.
I'm enthusiastic about bringing Mike Testani in as our new superintendent. Mike checked key boxes for me during the interview process. He demonstrated a real passion for the students that we're here to ultimately serve. Mike's coming into this role with tested experience, an impressive origin story, and a vested interest as a Fairfield resident.
Thank you, Mr. Rotelli and Mr. Asa. And to the public, I know that to have this meeting kind of pop up in the middle of the week, unfortunately, it's somewhat the nature of the beast when hiring a new superintendent. We are fortunate enough to have candidates that are sitting superintendents. And, as Mr. Asa said very often, that there is 90 days notice, and we want to be respectful of the community that Mr. Testani will be leaving, and as we welcome him here in Fairfield. So with that, going to take it to the board for action. All in favor? Ms. Rotelli, Ms. Jacobson, Ms. Guernsey, Mrs. Gerber, Mrs. Vitale, Mr. Asa, Mr. Peterson, Ms. Kelly. All opposed? Mrs. Maxincanelli. Motion carries 8-1. Congratulations, Mr. Testani. And welcome to the Fairfield Public Schools. Mr. Testani is here with us today, and I'm going to give him a moment just to come up to the mic. Just to this mic, and one of the first things that you will learn as an incoming superintendent is that you need to hold the button on the mic and you need to continue to press it as you speak.
Gotcha.
This is a test. Let's
yes.
see how you do with this.
So far, so good, I think. I am truly excited and honored to be here tonight and named as the next superintendent here in Fairfield. I want to thank the board wholeheartedly for this opportunity. I will serve this community well. I will give 110% of my efforts on behalf of all children and families here in Fairfield Public Schools. I look forward to working with all of you. I'm truly blessed here tonight, and not many things get me speechless, and this is kind of one of those moments. But I do want to mention, and I know we were talking before the meeting briefly, how I was impressed with the process here in Fairfield, the professionalism that was shown throughout the search, and I think that's a testament to all of you as a school board, and I think that's one of the attributes that really makes Fairfield a special place, is that the leadership is strong, and it's things are conducted, the business on behalf of children, and first and foremost in families, and that's important to me.
Thank you, Mr. Testani. And, as you said, the process was very disciplined and very formal. And I'm going to ask the board for a motion for just a brief recess, say 5-minute recess, just to give everyone an opportunity to personally congratulate Mr. Testani and maybe just do some introductions for those in the room. Can I have a motion for that? Actually, unanimous consent to the board, just for a recess, 5-minute recess. All right, we'll be back in 5. Okay, we are back in session. Okay, we're moving on to the first reading, updated racial imbalance plan. We had not an official first reading, but the plan was brought forward to the board at the end of July for discussion and input. We had a good discussion at that meeting. I thank those board members who reached out via email to share some additional suggestions to the plan with Dr. Tracy. Dr. Tracy, Mr. Ace and I met just to kind of go over some of those things, and they were incorporated into the proposed amendment. And the plan before you today will be is considered a first read, and we will be taking action on it at our meeting on August 30th. Dr. Tracy, I don't know if you have any Initial comments?
Yes, thank you. And just briefly, as the chairwoman stated, this is a discussion-only item tonight. And I wanted to thank you all for your feedback, especially Ms. Jacobson, who gave me a lot of specific improvements, many of which I was able to incorporate, and other folks who emailed in with improvements. As you know, the plan is due to the State Board of Education by September 8th. So approving it on the 30th would be very timely. I want to just highlight the things that have changed as a result of your feedback from the previous version. One, the magnet school section of the plan is still there, but greatly reduced. As the point was made last time, it really isn't realistic to do redistricting and then follow that with a magnet school a year later. So I tried moving the magnet school up to do it simultaneously, and the logistical challenge, frankly, of doing that and redistricting all at the same time just struck me as easy to write about and hard to actually do. And especially given the importance of the program, its unlikely significant impact on your racial balance numbers and the arrival of a new superintendent. I just said to myself, you know what, let me make this more aspirational, something that the board and the new administration want to look at and consider, but not make it a promise and not put a date on it. So that's a change. Several changes to the redistricting provision. One, to call for this board to provide a charge, if you will, a direction with respect to redistricting before the staff gets into the detailed work of coming up with plans. Second, it's plans plural. Several of you suggested that you would like to see more than one option, and so that has changed. Another significant change is that instead of stating in this plan a percentage target, the plan or the amendment simply states that the board will act on a plan that complies with the law. And so a lot may happen in the months between now and then, and so I think that gives you some flexibility. Fourth, this document does call for the engagement of an outside firm to assist with the complicated business of calculating various scenarios and what the impact would be. Fifth, we've added somewhat to the opportunities for the public to be heard, not only at a public board meeting, but also at a separate hearing on this matter. And finally, the reference to approve has been changed to act upon. Of course, I can't predict or require that the board approve anything, so that correction was made as well. Finally, in Appendix 2, the enrollment information, which previously reflected the coming school year, has been adjusted to reflect the SLAM projections for 24-25, which is the year that the redistricting would take place. So that seemed like a good change to make. That is it. I'm happy to take any further discussion or suggestions now between tonight and the night that you'll be asked to vote. Thank you.
Mrs. Gerber.
Yeah, thank you very much for these changes. I have a few questions, and I guess I'm not sure, since I mean, I understand that this is what is going to the State Board of Ed by September 8th, but there are some issues and some questions that I have that, while they aren't directly tied to racial imbalance, they certainly play a role in redistricting. For instance, when we're talking about, K through 5 redistricting, again, I mean, students grades 6 through 12 will be impacted as well. And so obviously that needs to be considered in any redistricting plan, the impact, because you don't want to try to, solve, and I hate to say solve a problem, but, with the racial imbalance, and then create, space issues on the middle school level or on the high school level. So there is that question / concern. Just, is it important for us to have it in there? I understand that this is regarding racial imbalance on the elementary level, but I just think it's important, especially since we know that parents and everyone in Fairfield will be reading this too, that we make it really clear that we have to be transparent as possible, that this is not just going to impact K through 5. This is going to impact K through 12. Then another question I have is just in terms of, on the facilities side. So I guess, when are we going to get the new waterfall, and when are we going to have discussions about what is taking place with Dwight? Because that obviously is going to play a role in any redistricting plan that we're looking at. And so I just wouldn't want to get too far down with the plan, not knowing what decisions we may or may not be making regarding Dwight.
You can.
Couple of good points. Thanks, Jess. And we can certainly incorporate some reference to the need to look at the impact of this on the secondary schools, since it's all the whole feeder pattern. I think our intention with respect to the waterfall is to present that in September. I'm just looking to Mr. Papa George, and he's nodding yes. So the plan would be to have that for you next month.
Okay, so then I guess just in terms of when we're talking about, and I get that with the redistricting plans, that part of the timeline is like January through May, where those are going to be worked on. So even though it's not meant here, we will have had some discussions. We will have some more information regarding Dwight and anything else regarding elementary facilities that could play a role in any redistricting plan, because and that will be shared with whatever consultant we use for the redistricting plans.
Absolutely. And, just to remind the board and the public really where we were in March of 2020, the board had adopted a charge, guidelines, gave that to Malone and McBroom, which guided their work in terms of the redistricting plans that were put forward. This document before us meets a need that the state has asked us for in terms of addressing how we're going to address the racial balance with the district. There are a lot of other details on the facility side and how that might impact the redistricting. The facilities committee had a special meeting over the summer. We really got to the point where one of our first things was we need to just make a decision about Dwight. That really is first and foremost in terms of, a lot of talk in the community, well, just close Dwight. You may recall the last time we had the discussion and the plans that were presented, in order for that to happen, Mill Hill needed to be built to a 504 capacity. Mill Hill is not a 504 capacity, so things have changed. The facilities committee, and Mr. Asa, correct me and Mr. Rotella if I'm wrong, our recommendation would be get the board's support for retaining SLAM to answer that question sooner rather than later. In terms of agendas, spoke to Mr. Papa George, as Dr. Tracy said, plan to have the waterfall before the board at our first September meeting. He is working on the waterfall to show the cash impact per year, which is a change from, years past. It was the total cost of the project. In working with the town and the capital planning workshop, the capital planning working group, it's really looking at cash flow per each year. The town has given us, as I've reported, $12.5 million a year for school projects approximately as a starting point. So, there's a lot of moving pieces there. That's a decision. Some of the initial conversations are happening in facilities, but it's going to be coming to the full board. Lots of steps in that full board discussion. Didn't think that they needed to necessarily be included in this document because the timing of it could somewhat be impacted when the town meetings are. It's when the capital waterfall meeting is, but that work is absolutely going to be on the board's agenda, top priority this fall. Mr. Asa, Mr. Rotella, I don't know if anything to add, if I'm from.
No, I just think
Facilities.
to the point we did discuss that, this needs to come to the full board. We need to discuss, we need to see the waterfall, and we need to discuss scenarios of, what implications would be based on some of the things that we're going to talk about, knowing that Dwight is a $50 million project on a waterfall. Was our consensus that we should really know, when the full board starts to discuss what we're doing with Dwight, whether we're rebuilding it, renovating it, adding, or closing, it would really be helpful for the board to know what the implications of those different things were. So I think that was the point that Mrs. Vitale made.
Yeah, no, and I don't want to get too far off the subject because we're talking about the racial imbalance, but since this is part of this packet, when we're looking at, the capacity, the utilization rate, I mean, right now for K through 5, the utilization rate is 81%, but if we closed a school, any school, that rate would go way up pretty quickly, which would really, I would imagine, limit some things regarding how we could redistrict. And then the other question I had just in terms of, and I know that this is probably going to be a difficult question to answer considering where we are in terms of, Dr. Tracy being here and Mr. Testani coming on. But, just in terms of, the ECC, where is that? And I don't know if the facilities committee has been discussing that as well, but just in terms of the space needs for the ECC, any expansion there, any, needs for additional CLCs, just again, that all impacts the space utilization. And while it certainly is not directly related to racial imbalance, it will certainly play a role in any redistricting plan, since redistricting is such a big piece of this amendment. And then one other thing I just wanted to mention, I don't know if this was discussed, and I apologize if it was, but, is there any discussion about having the State Board of Ed come to visit McKinley again? Because last time they did, it was some time ago. And I believe that an invitation was issued, and I believe it has not been responded to yet. But perhaps if we could reissue it a second time, or a third time, or however many times we've been issuing it, because I really do think, I'm not saying that it's going to change anything, but, if we're going to be really complete in, having people understand exactly what the impact could be on Fairfield and on the McKinley community, I think that would really be helpful. And then the other thing too, I was just wondering is just, and I don't know if we need to put this in writing, but I think it's really important for us to make sure that the other town bodies, town officials, our state reps, state senator are all kept in the loop as far as this goes, because this isn't going to impact our entire town. And this is a topic that has been discussed at great length in this town for quite some time. And since we do have confirmation from our legal counsel and from the town attorney as well, I believe that this is something that we need to do. And I know I'm just reiterating what was discussed at the last meeting, but in case anyone didn't hear that, this is not something that we can say we're not going to do. And that we've been told in no uncertain terms that we have to move forward with this. So I just think it's important for our community to understand that and to be just, kept apprised of everything. At the end of the day, this is going to be the board's decision, the vote, whatever we have to do in terms of a plan, of redistricting plans or anything. But I do think it's important for the other town officials to be made aware of each step as we move forward.
We can, when we transmit the plan, we can certainly repeat the invitation for the state board to come and visit and see what you all are trying to do.
And the first draft of the plan was sent to the first selectwoman, our state delegation. Mr. Ace and I both reached out to the first selectwoman, just, giving her a heads up about our election of a new superintendent tonight, and also that we are moving forward on discussions for, the racial balance plan, and wanting some guidance just in terms of the timeline for the capital planning on the town side, because as reported, the town is looking to finalize, a 5-year capital plan, before the end of this calendar year. So all that work is going to be happening simultaneously.
And just
You
one more
start
thing,
first.
sorry. And then the other thing too, in light of the board's vote earlier this evening, if Mr. Testani is able to come by November 1st or by December 1st, which might be more likely with the whole 90-day thing, just if you look at what's going on from December 1st on, I just, there's still only 24 hours in the day, and there's an awful lot of work that's going to need to be done. And this is a really ambitious timeline. And obviously, I'm sure everyone here, and I'm sure Mr. Testani as well, will be, doing our best to make sure that we adhere to these timelines. But there are a lot of other things that are going to be happening between December 1st and May 30th, aka the budget, as well as a new superintendent getting to know the district. So I just wanted to put that out there. This is, it is kind of concerning to me how much that we are expected to do in such a short time frame, relatively speaking. And I know that this is something that we've been discussing for a long time, but there's a lot here that will need to be done in a relatively short period of time.
Mr. Asa?
Yeah, just two things. One, to Mrs. Gerber's point that she made earlier in her comments, I think it's important to remember that what we are looking at is a document for the state board. It is not a necessarily the be-all, end-all comprehensive guide for the work ahead of us. It is obviously going to be much more entailed. And the one thing I would just ask the board to consider is, not looking to fill this document with too many more details that the state board isn't asking for, nor do they need. The state board has made it clear that they want us to take action, and in taking action, by the work we're doing here and then engaging in some of the goals that are set forth in this document is basically more work than this board has done. And not to diminish any of the work of the previous boards, but they're looking for movement. And the way that districts like Greenwich have been able to continue while being out of compliance is they have taken steps that they have said they would take. So yes, I agree that this is an ambitious timeline, but I think if the state board sees that we're making a commitment or a recommitment and then actually taking the actions. So God forbid something happens and something's delayed or it doesn't meet one of these dates, I don't think the state board is going to come down and crack the whip and file it at 10 whatever. I think they want to see movement, and I think that's what this document is providing.
Any other questions, Mrs. Gerber? Ms. Jacobson?
Couple more specific questions. I had submitted a question in our currently approved plan. There are two provisions that we utilize that are not listed in here. So I just was wondering if Dr. Tracy, you could speak to those two, because I presume if we had this in amendment form, they'd be strike-throughs, but I just want to be clear. The current provision for opting into McKinley, since that's not in here, and I'm taking this as a replacement document, that will cease. Is that correct?
I really haven't had discussions of that with my colleagues. My impression from studying the history is that provision has not resulted in our being in compliance. So we could still do that just as an option for parents, as an expression of school choice. That was my assumption. But perhaps when I get to talk with my colleagues, there might be some reason to stop it. It's not mentioned here because it's not something new. It's not a new commitment from the board. And at least in the last several years, it has not resulted in solving the problem.
Okay, so I was just mainly concerned about people who are currently exercising that option and what, so
no.
that would be maintained, and
Yes,
I guess, and
I
further,
have no intention of telling people they have to go back. In fact, I hope we could
it
continue.
may
to offer the
happen from
option.
redistricting, but
Yeah.
it, not per this plan.
Right.
Okay. And then the other one is, we can probably save that for redistricting as well, because the other one was post pre-K options to remain in the schools. So that, I assume it was not going to be a part of this plan either, but it will be a discussion as we go forth into the other options, because that may end as well. Okay. One little edit in the October 15th, 2023 box. If you could just put an S on the plan, that's singular, one more time for me, that would be really helpful. October 15, 2023. Yes. And then I guess October 30th is when we would be picking one of them, is from my understanding of this timeline. Yes, Nick is, Nick. Right. Right. Okay, so, and I'll just echo a couple things from Mrs. Gerber. I do find some of the language on elementary a little, I don't know how to put it, inconsistent maybe, but I do think we owe it to our secondary families to at least acknowledge that the impact will be there as well, even if we're not looking at secondary maps, which this clearly says we're not, that there would still be 612 impact there. And that was a comment that I had put in before, and I just think that we need to include them in our thought process here. And for the State Board of Education as well. They should understand that this is not just elementary. And I think that I also had a concern on the December issue. But as Mr. Issa said, some of these may change in timeline, but I did feel like December was 1 month to engage, create, and evaluate for a new superintendent seems, tight in that 1 month. But those were just my suggestions and questions for now. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Mrs. Maxinelli?
Yes, thank you. One follow-up, I hadn't intended to comment first, but to Mr. Ace's point that this is just the plan that's going to the state, and obviously we all know that. What I'm concerned about is it's also, though, the only piece of communication we have for the public to reference. And while we know that this is meant to satisfy something. I'm just throwing out there to the board of whether it's something that we put on the website or what have you, but there is in fact a tremendous amount more detail that our community will want and need, and we would want to organize for that. Exactly what are these, what exactly is this outreach to the public going to look like? Is it each PTA plus a meeting at the library, Penfield, whatever it might be? There is going to be a great yearning for information. And rather than have us be charged with answering a lot of emails, with have staff taking time up with that, I just put out there to leadership or to whomever that that's something we're going to want to create as soon as possible, also to ensure the consistency of messaging. So that point, one other very minor point.
I just follow up, just a comment on that. I mean, we do have a racial imbalance plan on the district website, and as we move forward with implementing this plan, I see that being a place to house new documents, updates to the plan. The board knows that every year we have to update the state board on where we are with the plan. So we are approving this now for presentation by the September 8th deadline, but it can evolve, I think. And I think that those updates are going to be provided to the state and through the community. And for those listening, I'd say first stop, if you have questions about this, just check the webpage on the Board of Ed website to start.
Just to Mrs. Maxon Kennelly's point, I agree with you. I think we're talking about racial imbalance here, but as we talk about redistricting and whatnot, that we are focusing on regardless of racial imbalancing because of facility utilization. So I do think a dedicated page on our webpage to have that information is a good idea. And we can discuss how the best way to do that, but I do think that that is a good point. And it might be good to have, while some may not agree, continue the racial imbalance page, but also have an update page that covers all things regarding this.
Right, because here's something I wouldn't want to do. I'm not going to tell members of the public, go ahead and take a look at the just voted on racial imbalance update. This is not the document. I think it is a useful start, but for anyone in the public who's actually paid attention and read this, it's going to prompt a lot more questions. Again, what does that parent engagement look like? The thought that we're going to have just one public forum, that's a bit of a guffaw moment, but that's what I mean by that. There's a degree of exactly what the communication is going to look like and what the public can expect to see when. At an initial point this fall, my vision of this is, first of all, a tremendous amount of work. Thank you, Facilities Subcommittee, on them for doing their work. But that's something that the public could be apprised of, exactly to Mr. Ace's point of that's not covered on the racial imbalance plan. Where the outreach is to the public. When is it a matter of discussing the principles of the charge to the firm? And where is it a matter of actually looking at plans? Those are all details that the sooner we have it, the better. And again, entirely apart from the racial imbalance plan.
Mr. Asa.
And one more thing, as far as community engagement, if you notice on the timeline, and the last one, we took out dates where it says ongoing, continued community engagement. Again, that is for the purpose of this document. And I agree with you that as we move forward in this process, we will have a much more detailed and thorough description of what that will be and when that will be.
Right.
But again, let's not put too many dates in this document.
And that's where I absolutely hear
I
your
agree
point.
with you.
We need something for the state. We have something for the state, but this is affecting our families, our kids, staff, et cetera. They're going to want more than this, and we don't have answers for them. So that's all I'm putting out there. While we're on the topic of edits, one quick edit at the bottom of page 3 in the section on the district improvement plan, the first bullet point, acknowledge, explore, and value and importance. Bottom of page 3. Yeah. And then a few other questions or issues. Again, third person to say it, but I agree with needing to be explicit that this can impact through grade 12. And again, I hear Mr. Ace, I hear Mr. Ace's voice saying, well, we know that this is for the state, but again, as of now, this is the only thing the public has to look at. So until we get the rest of those support documents or support communication, I think this needs to be, that needs to be explicit. So I'll skip over the other thing. I am curious if I'm very interested, and of course, this goes right to the chair of the facilities subcommittee. I would hope that this is something that is a schedule that you feel that you can handle. Because there's an awful lot that will
Not
be.
with, not with the posted calendar now. There will have to be a lot of meetings for both the subcommittee and the full board. We're going to be meeting a lot.
But I'm talking about just for the fall. Because that's going to be then adding special meetings.
I do think yes. But I think ultimately this board, there will be plenty of work for the subcommittee to do. But I think this board in general has said that a lot of this work they want at the full board level. So as much as we can do at committee level, yes, and we will schedule those meetings as needed. But if that answers your question, yes, it's an ambitious timeline, but we have to try.
No, I'm not questioning, just wanted to, again, it's more a matter of, I want to have said it, so I did. In this forming, and again, this is off the racial imbalance plan, but a question for the board, where is the aspect of this plan where we work on the principles that will go to the firm? You know, for example, that's what I remember very well when we did the redistricting due to the Woods expansion. There were certain set principles. Now, the last time that we charged Slam with Malone and McBroom at the time, we ended up stripping out almost all of those rules, guideline. Right, but I'm asking about when is the discussion about those principles? Is that just going to be an ongoing fall agenda topic?
That will be on the fall agenda.
Okay.
I mean, we're getting into somewhat logistical planning on like what agenda it's going to be on, and that's wanted to have it. It's going to happen, whether or not the facilities committee has it first and brings a recommendation to the full board, or the full board has it on their agenda for a first read. I think we just need to look at our meeting agendas from now until the end of the year on approaching that. But it's definitely sooner rather than, as soon as we can, you know.
Okay. I'd also want to reiterate Mrs. Jacobson's point through the chair to Dr. Tracy regarding that opt-in to McKinley. We know that nothing has actually got us into compliance, but what I'm more interested in is what has moved the needle. And if that has moved the needle, that policy procedure guideline has moved the needle on improving, even though it did not solve racial imbalance, I would ask that it be included in this plan as something we are continuing. On the other hand, there's the distinct possibility that it has worsened, contributed to worsening the racial imbalance issue. And then I would just like to be explicit that this is something that is being discontinued. So again, that was the option for anyone in elementary school to simply opt in to McKinley. I don't think we have the answer now, but if we could by next week. Thank you.
I'll get the numbers for you before you vote, and then you can decide where you think that that option should go. It wasn't in here because I wasn't planning to change it, but we can certainly get you the numbers and see where we stand.
Right, except that I do think Mrs. Jacobson makes a fair point that since this is kind of being read as a replacement, then if we want to maintain something from a past plan, I would suggest it be included. That's, again, just in terms of what the public would be reading. And if there's a reason not to, I don't need to know it now, but you know, if we can know by next Tuesday.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Then finally, I am hoping, and again, I do think this is something that the state should be aware of, but I do think wherever the analysis, and I don't know if this goes to the finance subcommittee, but an analysis of what the potential actual financial impact could be of this, that by moving forward with this redistricting, if that happens, and if we solve racial imbalance and that has any impact on Title I funds or anything else, I think that needs to be explicit as well. And it could be a line item in the plan of saying analysis done of financial impact, but we're going to need to account for that. And so I think having it in there as a reference, obviously I recognize how the state reacted when you even attempted to bring up the financial issue the last time you spoke before them. But that doesn't mean it isn't going to have a very real impact and that we shouldn't know what that is and have that analysis done. That's my opinion.
I think it could potentially get complicated because the redistricting potentially, there could be cost savings. I don't want to go too far down this. You know, if you
No, but
what other things from a facilities point of view that might impact the redistricting might come with the cost savings. So I'm not really sure how you quantify it. I agree with you, but say we,
okay, so fair point.
you know, like
Maybe a really specific line item of, you know, analysis of loss of federal funds. I don't know, but that is a fair point, Mrs. Battalion. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, so now I'm not sure, but I still would like, at some point, we're going to have to know that number. So, all right, thank you.
Dr. Tracy.
Yes, I just wanted to go back to something that Mr. Asa said several comments ago, and that is that the way the plan in front of you has been crafted, its intention is to signal clearly to the state board that this board is serious about solving this problem and getting into compliance with the law within a reasonable period of time. And I think 24 months is pretty ambitious on the one hand. On the other hand, to try not to put so much detail in as to tie my successor's hands and commit him, now that we know who we're talking about, to all kinds of things that he has had nothing to say about. So now that I have someone I can talk to, we not for your vote on the 30th, but we can start to sketch out some of these things, including what we will do for public input and what some of the other steps will be. But I'm trying to thread a needle here between being specific enough that the state board finds us credible when we go up there this fall, but not locking my successor into things that he had no say in.
And as one quick follow-up to that point, again, strictly on the finances, is that you mentioned having our state delegation be kept apprised of all that we are doing. Well, again, if there is an aspect to that involves an explicit loss of funding due to the change in percentages at schools, I would like our state delegation to be armed with that and provided with that information as well. I don't know if they'll need it. I don't know what it could possibly come into play, but I still think it'd be information that they should know. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, we'll have Dr. Tracy off the bat just make those grammatical corrections without further discussion. Any objection to that, putting in the S's and correcting the grammar? All right, seeing no more discussion, I invite board members, any other thoughts on this over the next week, please send them to Dr. Tracy. As of right now, we're going to take action on this at our regular meeting on Tuesday. Okay, moving on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Tracy.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. First of all, we had our first in-person convocation ceremony this morning, and Ms. Gerber was able to attend, and also Ms. Maxine Kennelly was there, in addition to Ms. Vitale speaking for the board. I thought it was a good spirit. People seem to be happy to be back, and I thought all the comments that people made were positive, and looking forward to a year of good health and progress. So thank you for those of you who were able to be there. Second, Dr. Parrish and Dr. Zavajancic and I continue to watch carefully the issue of enrollment and sections at the elementary level. And the last time I checked, which was yesterday, we had not yet been compelled to add any sections as a result of kids coming in. That could change between now and Monday, because there are several schools with grades that are just within 1 or 2 students of being over the threshold. But so far, so good. I do want to give sorry, thank you. That's one of your important responsibilities here, to remind me to hold the button down. I wanted to, for any of you who haven't met Ms. Kanika Ingram, our new Executive Director for Human Resources, I keep having conversations with her, and people tell me, well, I'm meeting you for the first time. I thought I was the only person here that didn't already know everybody, but in any case, I wanted to give Kanika the opportunity, if you could, to just bring us up to date on the vacancies and the work that your team has been doing to get teachers into classrooms.
It's official. You have to sit, hold, give your name, your name and title for the public record.
Good evening. My name is Kanika Ingram, and I am the Executive Director of Human Resources. It's nice to meet you all and to be here this evening. So the Office of Human Resources, we're working extremely hard to ensure that there are classroom teachers in every classroom by Monday. So currently we have 11 full-time classroom openings and 16 part-time openings. With that being said, I do have 4 interviews tomorrow, and also 4 new hires. So that number will go down by the end of this week. So we will continue to work all week, over the weekend, and hopefully by the first day of classes, we will have all of our classrooms filled.
And I just want to repeat my thanks to Ms. Ingram and Ms. Hardiman and all the members of her team. This is a very tough market right now to be hiring folks, especially teachers. And so they're swimming against the tide and working very hard on behalf of our kids. So thank you, Kanika, for that effort.
Ms. Maxinelli, followed by Mr. Please.
So nice to meet you and welcome. Just one quick question. In addition to that, how are we doing for the para positions?
So the paras are a little more challenging. Currently, we have 40 vacancies. We've had since April 1st, 42 resignations. So it seems as fast as we're hiring paraprofessionals, they are resigning. So I am working with the special ed team to come up with a plan to ensure that we continue to recruit, hire, and retain our paraprofessionals.
And out of curiosity, are there, and I don't know if this is done for paras, but are there any type of exit interviews in terms of finding out, is it moving to other districts? Is it just moving on to other
So there
professions?
are. So Lisa Bennett on my team, she does exit interviews with each of the paraprofessionals. And so it's a combination of things. Moving to other districts, better pay, wanting part-time instead of full-time, or vice versa.
Yeah, through the chair to Dr. Tracy, would we be able to get a summary of that? Again, only if it's not arduous on staff time, because it's something that the board has been concerned about and for some time and just wanted to keep apprised of while we have fresh data.
Can I ask that you give us at least until after the second week of school?
Absolutely,
Thank
absolutely.
you.
Every time I ask Ms. Ingram for a report, I quickly add, I want you to be hiring, not reporting to me. So tell me if this is going to take more than 15 minutes. So I think we can certainly do it, but right now our focus is on getting ready for opening day. Yeah. Thank you.
Mr. Asa.
I thank you for that data when you're able to get it. Like Ms. Maxinelli, I think we need, as a board, need to understand if there's anything that we can be doing on our end to make the district more attractive. With the full-time teacher vacancies, just to be clear, if a classroom teacher is not filled, what is the general practice, and is it different at different levels?
It is different at different levels, but for the most part, we will either try to find a substitute or a current teacher will take on an additional section.
Okay, so if that were, do we know the breakdown, or that isn't to be shared tonight?
I do not have the breakdown.
Okay. So when possible, a long-term sub, basically, right? Okay.
Correct.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next item, I've issued new COVID guidance for the coming school year. I believe you all got copies of it. And as I said in my statement to parents, that we're all expecting the new year will be a time of recovery and progress after 2 years of concern and complications. We look forward to having our students where they belong, in their classrooms with their teachers, pursuing learning opportunities that are vital to their growth and development. And in keeping with the recently altered state and federal guidelines, we are taking a much lighter touch this time around. We're going to be treating COVID like we do all other respiratory illnesses. We'll be emphasizing voluntary testing at home, vaccinations, and limited isolation and masking for those infected or exposed. And I do want to thank again Jill Martin, who was with us this morning. And I'm sorry, thank you. Jill Mitchell and Sands Cleary, who've both been very helpful to me in keeping up with the bouncing ball, both at the federal and state level, as to what we can and must do. So looking forward to a healthy and productive year in that regard. On the facilities front, Mr. Papageorge reports that of the 97 projects that his group has taken on for the summer, 60% of them are completely done. Many others are nearing completion. The big project, of course, is the roof at Roger Ludlow Middle School. When I asked this morning, it was 98% done. Maybe it's 99% done now. But it will, neither that nor any of the other projects will interfere with the safe opening of school. And I really commend Angelus, and it's an incredible long list of things that they've been working on right down to the last minute. So thank you for that. And finally, on the transportation front, we have 109 buses registered and ready to go. We have 109 drivers with a couple of trainers in reserve in case anybody doesn't show up. And so we are ready to roll on Monday morning. That's it for me. Thank you.
Any questions for Dr. Tracy? Ms. Kelly?
Had a quick follow-up, and I apologize for not asking it when you were talking about it before. But on the class sizes and the, keeping your eye on that, if we could possibly get an update on those fifth grade classes that might possibly be going over the class size threshold for the fourth graders who will be going in for the fifth grade math, that would be helpful to me. I would like to see that.
Yeah, we can, in fact, we can get you a report on all the schools, all the grades. My colleagues track that on a regular basis, so sure we can do that. Some are closer than others, and some have inspired more parental interest than others, but we're sticking with the practice of remaining with the staffing as approved by the board unless actual enrollments.
Yes,
not promised
no.
enrollments, but actual
I agree with you on that, but I'm just saying we have some fourth graders this year who will be sitting in on fifth grade math. And those are the classrooms I'm curious to know if any of those fifth grade classes
Okay.
will get pushed over the threshold.
Impact of fifth grade math based on fourth.
On
By the
fourth
way,
graders,
the good
yes.
news is that almost all those fourth graders passed their exit exam and will be taking advantage. So
That's wonderful.
That's
There
good.
should be many more.
yeah.
Any other questions? Actually, I have one going back to the facilities. Are there any surprise maintenance projects that popped up over the summer that weren't on our original list? Air conditioning, leaking roofs, how, I asked for an update for our regular meeting, but is there anything to report before the start of school as we're sending kids into the building on Monday?
You got to come up and push the button, Angelus. I know we've had some air conditioning challenges. They seem to be getting resolved, but what say you?
Yeah, sorry. Nothing really major. We did, as Dr. Tracy mentioned, we've had some air conditioning challenges we've been trying to overcome and work through. A project that has come to a stall at this point would be the Ludlow High School controls project. Wiring wise, it's been great. We've run through it. We've been moving along on it, but now we're at the point now where we need to start putting pieces of equipment in place, such as thermostats, that type of stuff. And the supply chain is just, we grab them when we can, but they keep drying up and stopping and then it's starting again. So it's going to be a stop and start probably throughout the year.
Okay. And Mrs. Gerber? Too far down some of our projects. I really just wanted to know, like, if an air conditioning is out in a school, just to give Mr. Papageorge, or if the roof is still leaking at Riverfield in the APR, has that been fixed?
The roof has been addressed at Riverfield. Air conditioning, we lost the air conditioning at McKinley today. We are working with the reps to get it back up. We actually tripped the main breaker for the air conditioning units, which in turn tripped the main breaker for the entire building. So we have electricians out there tomorrow working on that to see what caused that and what we can do to repair it. Meanwhile, the units are running but not cooling, so we're bringing in fresh air still.
Thank you. Mr. Papageorge, do you think it'd be possible to get us like you usually give us the grid of the summer projects, to get that for our meeting next week?
Absolutely.
Okay. Mrs. Gerber, you can wait till next week? Okay. Thank you. All right, anything else, Dr. Tracy? All right, with that motion
That's
to,
it for me.
um, can I have a motion to adjourn? Mr. Asa, second by Mr. Peterson, all in favor? Motion carries 9-0. 1 hour meeting. Let's make,
Good night, everybody.